This presentation is about the Taiwanese culture, expanding our cultural knowledge. The objectives of this presentation are to understand various aspects of the Taiwanese culture, to reflect on knowledge gained about the Taiwanese culture, and to understand how knowledge of the Taiwanese culture will impact care of persons in this cultural group. Health beliefs and practices, including the traditional Chinese medicine. Health-related beliefs and practices in Taiwan are based primarily on traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, with over 62.5% of the population using TCM at least once during a 6-year study completed in 2014. This form of medicine has several characteristics, such as those of herbal remedies and the theories of yin and yang and qi blood to explain etiology, interpret symptoms, and guide self-care practices. To better understand health beliefs and practices, Li, Su, Chen, and Xu conducted a qualitative descriptive study of a group of 14 women. They found that health beliefs generally centered around culture and situational decision-making. Culturally, they found that there was a medicine-diet homology where there was no clear demarcation between food and medicine. Some people looked at fish as a means to increase energy, and the smaller the fish, the more concentrated the energy. There was also a reliance on both doctor and deity. The people would consult both for an ailment. They may see a gynecologist for hormone therapy, an herbalist to mediate the effects of the hormones, and a psychic to communicate with their deity for advice about how to proceed with treatment. Situational decision-making involves looking at one's entire situation, the possible courses of action, desired outcome, and potential side effects to decide how to proceed. Often, Taiwanese will utilize both modern and folk medicine to treat serious or life-threatening illness or injury. However, many times they do not seek a doctor for non-life-threatening illness or injury. Instead, they utilize food, herbs, and prayers. If those don't work, then they seek medical assistance. Family patterns. Families are traditionally male-dominated or patriarchal in nature. This is largely due to traditional Confucian China influences throughout the centuries. This influence has left clear gender lines in regard to division of labor within the family and left women at a clear social and economic disadvantage compared with men. Families also place great importance on lineage, wishing to keep their male lines pure and placing a heavy emphasis on ancestor worship. Marriages are often arranged to maintain these lines. The high degree of respect for ancestors also translates into respect and loyalty to the elder members of the family. Filial piety requires children and grandchildren to care for their parents and grandparents. Often the wife and her female children will care for her mother and father-in-law. Daily life is oriented toward family, job, and education, and family stability continues to be highly important. Modernization has brought with it some important changes to the family dynamic, with many areas becoming urbanized. This means there is less space for extended families to reside under the same roof. Since 1980, more than half of all families are nuclear in nature, and only 25% of the remaining families are extended. There are many more single people living and working in urbanized areas, including more women joining the workforce and delaying marriage and starting families of their own. Another reason for the increase in nuclear families is an increase in infertility. Family size has been consistently dropping since the 1990s, and there are many more childless couples. STEM family households are the most common multi-generational household and are composed of couples with unmarried children and usually the father's parents. Usually the head of the household is a male unless the male spouse was deceased. For the Taiwanese, communication is much more than what one says. It is how it is said, the situation surrounding it, and with whom it is being said. National identity, media, and local biases all play a role in how a Taiwanese person communicates. For many, their identity and the manner in which they speak is strongly associated with where they live, the North or Taipei, or the South, anywhere outside of Taipei. Their dialect presents an indication of where they are from and are either Taiwanese or Mandarin accented Taiwanese. They believe in yuan, or predestined relation. This basically means that there is a complex web of causative factors that are outside the control or even the comprehension of the human mind. Most Taiwanese pay great attention to situational context when interacting with other people. Having an understanding of indirect communication is highly important. For example, when meeting with someone in their home, if they offer a beverage, this would mean that they have time to talk and there's a feeling of yuan. However, if no beverage is offered, then the host either lacks time or is unwilling to talk and there is no yuan. Conversation should be comfortable and about topics that are considered to be safe, such as mutual friends, family, food, and places visited. Taboo topics would include politics and religious beliefs. Space and time orientation, cultural and religious beliefs. Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucianist beliefs play a large role in the perception of time and space for the Taiwanese individual. Social relationships derive importance from the belief that one cannot do anything alone, and everyone requires the help and cooperation of others. In order to get yuan, there are small exchanges of gifts or cigarettes, business cards, and the like to help break the ice. And then introductions are important. However, it's equally important to cultivate relationships through favors, openness, and letting down one's guard to build up a friendship. Nutritional patterns. Taiwanese people generally have a diet rich in grains, proteins, fruits, and vegetables. While they do not eat a lot of dairy, tofu, when soy milk is combined with calcium salt, turns into tofu and has higher levels of calcium than regular cow's milk. The elderly have a decreased intake of all dietary groups for a variety of reasons, which include both physiological and socioeconomic reasons. Physiologically, poor dentition, decreased energy levels, and increased weakness are a few reasons for poor intake. The study by Tsai, Liu, and Chang shows that age, sex, education, and physical activity impact food intake patterns, and that risk of malnutrition does exist in some elderly in Taiwan. Pain influences people in multiple domains. Physically, it impacts their ability to complete essential activities. Emotionally, it impacts their sense of control over their body and circumstances, and often makes them reliant upon others. Behaviorally, it can cause increases in agitation and aggressiveness. Ultimately, when looking at the elderly, pain can result in increased falls, sleep disorders, depression, anxiety, increased memory loss, and decreases in social contact and ability to complete daily activities. How one responds to pain is greatly influenced by one's culture. In Taiwan, the culture is predominantly Chinese in origin and follows many Chinese customs and beliefs. In fact, around 86.9% of the general population of Taiwan utilizes some form of complementary or alternative therapy, otherwise known as CAM. Some of these therapies can have interactions with traditional medical therapies, and it is very important for nurses and doctors to ask their Taiwanese patients about any other treatments they are using. Infertility and perinatal care. Since 1970, the total fertility rate, or TFR, in Taiwan has seen a significant decline. This is due in large part to women entering the workforce and marrying at a later age, thereby having their first child at a later age. This has resulted in an increase in the use of artificial reproductive technology, or ART, with over 67.5% of women utilizing it being over the age of 35. Once pregnant, Taiwanese women share many of the same cultural beliefs as Chinese women. Some of these include not lifting one's hands or arms above the head because it may cause the umbilical cord to wrap around the baby's neck. Don't use scissors or a knife because it could cause the development of a cleft palate. Drink a lot of 100% pure fruit juice to give the baby healthy and beautiful skin. Don't eat pineapple because it can cause miscarriages, or lamb because it can cause epilepsy. Pregnancy is considered a hot condition. Maintain yin and yang balance by incorporating cold foods like fruit. During birth, Taiwanese women will generally not scream or make a lot of noise due to fear of attracting evil spirits to the baby. The woman's mother will likely attend the first birth, but not subsequent ones, and the mother-in-law will also attend the birth and take charge of the recovery period after birth. There are several beliefs about the postpartum period, which include 1 month of rest and confinement, dressing warmly, limiting showers, eating foods only classed as hot to balance out what is considered a cold condition, eating alone due to the idea of pollution linked to lochial discharge, and no sexual relations for 1 month. It is important for healthcare professionals to discuss the potential risks of inactivity during the postpartum period and offer creative solutions to prevent complications like deep vein thromboses, such as possibly having their patients use chair exercises to keep their legs moving. Death and dying. In Taiwan, families often believe that the soul cannot return home from the hospital if the patients don't die at home. And this has a great deal of influence on the patient's preferred place of death. This is why many Taiwanese have it in writing that they are to go back home to die even if they are unconscious. It's important for doctors and nurses to give any bad news to the eldest family member first, and to allow the opportunity for all family members to be present for the final moments in their loved one's life. Death and dying are considered a family issue, not an individual issue in this society. And so the family, because of family piety, filial piety, will take care of their parents or other family members and do everything good for them up to and past the moment of their passing. Spirituality, religion, and faith in Taiwan are connected through Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. There are also other beliefs that include ancestral worship, Chinese folk religious practices, and something called the Hell Bank Note, which is basically money purchased and then burnt to give currency to loved ones in the afterlife. Buddhism started with Siddhartha, the founder, who was born in India and had his first enlightenment around the age of 35. There is a belief that the way to nirvana is through leading a moral life and meditation on the Eightfold Path. There's also a belief in reincarnation and karma. Taoism was founded by Lao Tzu around 500 BCE. It became the official religion of China under the Tang Dynasty. There's a belief in going with the flow in accordance with the Tao. It includes practices like ancestor and spirit worship. In a few moments, you'll see some information on Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism with some small videos. Some major religious holidays include the Chinese New Year in January, Nirvana Day, which is the celebration of Buddha's death at the age of 80 when he reached nirvana. There's the Lantern Festival in February, which is the celebration of the first full moon and also the birthday of the Taoist god of good fortune. Confucius's birthday is celebrated in September, and Bodhi Day is the day that Siddhartha became the historical Buddha and experienced his first enlightenment, and this is celebrated in December. Those are just a few of the major holidays. So now we will go to the information on YouTube about Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. I'm Joshua Phillip, senior investigator.
Buddhism is one of the 5 largest religions in the world. I'm sure you've seen Buddhist monks in martial arts movies. You've heard of meditation retreats. You've seen those big fat Buddha statues at your aunt's house. But what is Buddhism? And what do Buddhists actually believe? That's what we're going to cover today. Buddhism follows the teachings of the Buddha, or the Awakened One. I won't go into the story of Siddhartha Gautama and his famous descent from plain Jane prince making it rain in Nepal to his enlightenment under the famous Bodhi tree, but we will explore his teachings. I'm obviously not going to summarize an entire religion on a YouTube video, but the foundational teachings of Buddhism cover a few key things. All the teachings of the Buddha are aimed solely at liberating sentient beings from suffering, that with right action and with right mindset, we can end our suffering. The Buddhist teachings mainly revolve around human suffering and ways to end it. For example, the 4 Noble Truths are that life often, in fact almost always, involves suffering. The reason for this suffering is that we want things to be a certain way. The cure to this suffering is to rise above the desire. And the way to rise above this desire is to follow the Noble Eightfold Path, practices which help us change our minds and understanding. Now that we're getting further down the rabbit hole, the Noble Eightfold Path is another one of the main Buddhist staples. That if we take right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, then we can begin to understand the 4 Noble Truths. We can understand our suffering and reach nirvana. Now, nirvana isn't just a famous band from the 90s. It's a supreme state of being in Buddhism. It means the complete letting go of desires and suffering. As we can see, the Buddhists believe most of the problems in the world are due to suffering, and a lot of our suffering is caused by our desires. Buddhist practices are focused on removing our desires and living in the present moment. The one who has conquered himself is a far greater hero than he who has defeated 1,000 times 1,000 men. This has been a brief summary of Buddhism and what the Buddhists believe. Buddhists do not believe that people should look to gods to save them or bring them enlightenment. Rather, individuals should work out their own path the best they can. It's a religion or a philosophy that focuses on helping yourself, being kind and helping others, and removing your desires to achieve spiritual happiness. Buddhism is one of my favorite religions and is spread through the world with its practical applications in everyday life. Was this video helpful? Would you like to hear more about the middle way, the 3 universal truths, and more Buddhist things in the next video? Or no? Let me know. Be sure to check out our other videos on religions and philosophies here.
The great enemy of writing isn't your own lack of talent, it's being interrupted.
Taoism is a Chinese philosophy that was started by a dude that may not have even been real. His name? Lao Tzu. Thousands of years ago, this mythical man had some crazy ideas that can now be found in the book, the Tao Te Ching. He basically says that there is a naturally spontaneous and eternal order to the world that he calls the Tao, or the Way. Guess what? We can tap into this great way through another kind of way, Wu Wei. Wu Wei means action without action. Confused yet? Well, to clear it up, Lao Tzu said, "Stop trying to leave and you will arrive. Stop seeking and you will see." He also said, if you try to change it, you will ruin it. Try to hold it and you will lose it. You might ask, what's the basic goal of Taoist practitioners? Most would say it's to live in an effortless action and in peace of heart, to free yourself from your own beliefs. To make things more difficult, however, you have to do all this without trying. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Thought Monkey.
Hello, welcome to China Mosaic. I'm Suma Lu. September 28th marks the 2,569 years since the birth of Confucius, who's known as the great sage and teacher in China, whose ethical and philosophical teachings continue to have a profound influence on every aspect of Chinese society. In China, even a 3-year-old toddler can recite some of his famous quotes, such as, "What a joy to have friends coming from afar." And whenever I walk with 2 other men, I can always find teachers in them. Understanding Confucius is one of the ways to understand the minds of the Chinese people. Confucius' views are quite different from the pursuit of seeking your true self emphasized in Western philosophy. According to Roger Ames, a professor of the University of Hawaii, Confucius' views can be concluded as the following. The way in which we become consummate as human beings lies in the roles and relationships that locate us with our family and community. This requires one to become a better parent, a better child, a better teacher, a better merchant, or a better emperor. Confucianism teaches that a ruler should rule by virtue, but not by force, with a complete system established to constrain imperial power. This view was highly praised by French philosopher Voltaire, who believed it to be very advantageous, because in Chinese society, where Confucianism was taken as the mainstream philosophy, the government only needed to maintain social morality, while the general public could handle everyday affairs through their own moral and ethical judgment. It is thus clear that the spread of ideas and thoughts is not entirely limited to a particular country or era. With a practical philosophy focusing on the relationship between individual and society, Confucianism found its way deep into the hearts of the people. Even in our time, the internet age of the 21st century, Confucius' theory is still worth learning. Ma Yun, also known as Jack Ma, founder and executive chairman of China's e-commerce giant Alibaba Group, believes that Chinese enterprises can gain fundamental strengths from traditional Chinese culture. He once said that a company which has developed to a considerably large scale but still knows nothing about the ideological system of Confucianism will have no chance to last in the market. Ancient Greece, India, and China from the 6th century BC to the 4th century BC produced a good number of outstanding philosophers and thinkers, such as Socrates, Sakyamuni, and Confucius. This period is held as the Axial Age in the history of human civilizations. While the great thinkers of the past may have had no way to communicate with each other, today people can carry out varied cultural exchanges through multiple channels and platforms. It is exactly this mutual understanding, mutual respect, and mutual learning among different civilizations that Confucius conveyed to us as harmony in diversity. Thank you for watching.
Prayer and meditation kind of follows all of the religions in Taiwan, especially the major ones of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism, and they all utilize one form or another of meditation or prayer. Buddhism's focus is on mantras and visualizations and managing one's breathing. Taoism focuses on mindfulness, contemplation, and visualization. Confucianism focuses more on self-improvement and contemplation. Prayer and meditation all have similar effects physiologically. Both are highly effective in redirecting one's thoughts outside of oneself, and that allows a lowering to reactivity to traumatic events. It can actually help produce oxytocin, which is a feel-good hormone, and allows you to have a sense of safety and well-being. So what are some things that this presenter has learned in researching information about the Taiwanese culture? Communication-wise, I learned that introductions are a must. We have to keep the topics comfortable, and exchanges of small gifts or business cards are normal. And there's a proper way of doing the exchanges and making sure that you don't give a front when introducing yourself. In regard to death and dying, did not know that they believe that you have to die at home in order for your soul to be able to be at home. Filial piety ensures dying family members are cared for all the way to the end, and that it's the children and grandchildren who take care of their parents and grandparents. So it's important to understand that and include the family in decision making. Health belief-wise, I learned that most Taiwanese see the doctor and divine as complementary and to use interventions from both. That Chinese medicine is utilized in conjunction with modern medicine, and it's very important to ask about all treatment modalities. So what does this knowledge do to change my practice? Well, in communication-wise, I need to ensure communication with the eldest family member first to maintain propriety, and make sure that I introduce myself and offer a business card, because that is one way of showing openness and making the other party feel comfortable. Treatment-wise, I need to verify that all treatment modalities are disclosed so as to prevent any interactions between herbal medicines and prescribed medicines. I need to respect the beliefs in unusual modalities, or things like diseases being hot or cold, or pregnancy being a cold event and postpartum, or pregnancy, I'm sorry, being a hot event and postpartum being cold, and knowing to offer the opposite in way of food or drink or activity, so to balance yin and yang. End of life, I have to respect the wishes of the patient to die at home, even should they be unconscious. It's not unexpected in Taiwan for somebody to be discharged home very shortly prior to death, so that the family members can care for them and be surrounding them at the moment of their passing. I would need to make sure that I give any bad news to the eldest family member first to maintain propriety, and ensure that the family has the resources to care for the dying person at home, even though it would be for a short while. With pregnancy and postpartum, need to remember to offer cool drinks and foods during pregnancy, and offer hot drinks and foods after pregnancy, and creative solutions that allow for the 30-day rest period after birth without risk of complications. Here are the references for this presentation. Thank you for watching this presentation on the Taiwanese culture.